Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the EWatch podcast. We're giving you all the insight and support you need to get hyped about League of Legends esports. I'm Sam. I got Rhino and Manny on to my sides if you guys are watching on YouTube. And we are going to be talking about 3 players that we think are overrated. We've talked about a lot of them on a lot of our power rankings. So these are ones that we haven't mentioned, specifically ones that we haven't mentioned. Rhino, do you want to start with yours?
Sure. So the player that I believe is performing probably the worst at either you can say underperforming or overrated. I think those terms are interchangeable for this player, but mine's Altec.
Ooh.
I think for being in the first spot and being a subpar AD carry comparative, I think to the other duo lanes, it could be part of Adrian's fault, but I also think that like you're just as responsible for your laner as yourself. So I think that when you're in dual lane, whatever your support does is also reflective of how you play, because there's got to be some form of communication there. So I believe that the Adrian Altec bot lane, that I'll just put in quotations, I think is heavily underperforming, and I think it showed especially in this previous week, which is what, week 7? Yeah, week 7 gameplay. I feel like Altec and Adrian just got absolutely smashed every single game. So that's my 2 cents on the failures of bot lane.
Do you have an opinion about that, Manny?
I mean, I think it's interesting, right? Because I think he's definitely been underperforming as of late.
They lost to Definitely in Matt.
I mean,
I'm just flaming.
I'm not gonna touch that because I think that's a whole different video for me. Because I feel like the Golden Guardian squad has been pretty underrated. It's been tough as a whole NA team, but again, we won't touch that right now. I think they've been figured out in the scheme of Echo Fox, right? And how Echo Fox have been winning. And it's before people would be like, if we get Huni behind, who do they have? And it's Altec and Adrian is just we can farm freely all game. What the fuck? We just reach all our power spikes. They were doing well. So I could see where you're coming from. I could see where you're coming from with it. I don't know. It's tough. I think it's more of as of late than whole split. I think Altec and Adrian have been very dominant, but again, these past few weeks, it's been well, everything's collapsing, right? And it's Echo Fox. This is when we see if Echo Fox has a mental fortitude to withstand what's going on.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Or if the bot lane just are bad and can't hang on, really, because I get where you're coming from, because the thing is, there's not pressure in the bot lane because everyone was focusing Huni a lot, right? And then now that they've been exposed, is it because they're bad, or is it because they weren't prepared for that and they didn't know how to deal with it? And maybe with training, they actually show hey, we figured out we're fine. We just have to play it this way. And then especially the way that Echo Fox plays so scrappily, I think it can be very easy. It can be very easy or difficult for an AD carry to survive that, because they might not have the peel. But if there's so much focus on Dardoch and Huni, you just don't look at Altec, and then Adrian does his thing on utility champions and protects everyone, or hard engages and sacrifices himself while Huni goes in and gets a triple kill and stuff like that. So I could definitely see him being overrated because of his past. He was just never something super, super special. He never stood out as an AD carry. And then now on Echo Fox being the number 1 team, he still isn't really standing out. And especially with this last week, it's oh, was it because he was really, really bad or overrated? And yeah, I could totally see that happening. And it'll be really interesting to see how the end of the season wraps up, and even playoffs, to see how when a team gets, multiple chances to redeem themselves and play out a best of 3 and a best of 5, what will happen in that bot lane. So I think it's a really interesting one. How about you, Manny? What do you got for us?
As much as it breaks my poor little heart, Ole, why?
He's such a nice guy, though, Manny. You're so rude.
Humble, diligent.
I love Ole. And so I don't necessarily want to say overrated. I think that's a little harsh on the kid. I think he played out his goddamn mind last year, right?
Uh-huh.
This is different Ole. I think it's never easy laning with double lift, right? I think a lot of people know that Aframu's relationship with double lift is a little, tense and stuff. And we know who Afro is, right? Like Afro's like the super chill guy. Like that means a lot, right? And it's changed, but I still feel like there's so much disconnect. And it's just so sad to see from a player that to some would say was the best player in, like he wasn't necessarily like in the MVP running, but like there was murmurs of that, right? Like of Ole possibly being an MVP caliber player, especially for that 2017 Immortal squad. And I just don't know. Like it's just he's been criticized so much, and I feel like once you join Team Liquid, once you join one of the higher ups, right? Like Immortals had a new fan base, everyone was nice with everyone, but once you get to like these old teams, right? Like the old guard, it's like, Ole, you missed your basic combo, you fucking idiot. It's like this guy's not used to this sort of criticism, right? Of like this toxicity that all the major, I want to say pretty much all the major teams have, right? I think like you wouldn't really see that in Immortals, right? Because Immortals was so new. So it was like, yeah, whatever, right? But you see that so much from TSM. You see that so much from Team Liquid, CLG, right? It's such toxicity that it's just like, it's been getting to him and it's been so hard for him to like even be, there's been glimpses, but even that is just not enough, right? I think he's still highly overrated this year or this season or the split.
Yeah, or underperforming maybe.
Yeah.
He's an interesting one because he was such a playmaker, right? He was roaming like crazy. He was kind of doing what Smoothie's doing now, the split, getting into the top lane, going everywhere, making his presence known. And Ole's, I feel like you kind of mentioned with double lift and maybe some of the criticism that he's just kind of like, or actually, I would even say this when they told Wild Turtle, like, don't flash forward, he was like not allowed to flash forward when he was on TSM by like Loco Doco. I think it was Loco Doco that made him like not, like they put him on a leash and Ole is just kind of like, or like how Matt has kind of lost his confidence on Liquid. He's been like told like, you can't do this and this is how you should be behaving and playing because of like the superstars or I don't know what it is. We assume it's double lift. We could be wrong, but double lift is very vocal and he is a veteran. And no matter what you think about double lift, I know all the pros are like double lift is like a veteran and well respected, so something's weird with Ole, like some block. Yeah. Or it could be a whole team thing, but yeah, something's weird. Rhino, what do you think?
I don't know. I think Ole's a good player, but I don't know if I'm not going to blame it so much on the environment. I think maybe it's an adjustment period, and I think Ole is just going to get better over time. Because I remember Ole when he first came into, he was a bit underwhelming, if I recall correctly. So yeah. I think over time he'll get slightly better.
He's a summer split player, is what you're telling me. There's still hope.
I think he can only get better. So as much as he's underperforming for this split,
well,
I think
I hard agree on that. You can only get better.
Hey, there are plenty of players in the LCS that they can only get worse, and they are already bad. It's just like, and some of those we've talked about a lot.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So my overrated player or underperforming player is actually Mithy, and this one, I'm not going to bring too much analytics into why I think this, but more of just like kind of what people have been saying about TSM. But Mithy was brought in not because of his mechanics. He's not like this mechanical god. And he's admitted to that, but he's really smart at the game. And anyone that has a conversation with Mithy, they're like, wow, this guy knows a lot. And especially with his connection with Sven, where Sven respects him so much that like, I'll go where Mithy goes too. I'll follow him to America because I want to succeed and Mithy is going to be successful. So he's brought him to a team that is having communication issues and identity issues. Like that is what Mithy is supposed to solve as like a very smart, clear, decisive player. And even if Mike Young as a jungler who typically are shot calling is not able to shot call, I think a support should be able to like carry pretty much all the shot calling role for their team and not be like the best team in the league, but a lot better than 6th place right now or 7th place. Where they're sitting in 6th place right now. So with that, I actually think that Mithy is super underperforming towards his expectations. That I think how he performed on G2 and what his expectations were to be bringing to TSM this split.
Mm-hmm. I'd agree with that.
Yeah. I could see that, and I mean, I think. The other thing is that like it's so hard. There's so many moving parts that had to align properly for TSM to be highly successful from the get-go, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, even still, right? People have been saying TSM are going to be fine in the future, right? Like it's more of like a time thing. And I think even considering how bad G2 were last summer, like they were damn bad, right? with Sven and Mithy. Like they were actually god awful. Like I don't think like the team had won like a single game with like their actual starting 5 until like week 5, and then they started winning. They made it to playoffs and they swept everything and they won everything. They're like, what the fuck, like so I mean, I do agree, and it's hard to necessarily pinpoint, but it's also hard when you see TSM let go of a player such as Biofrost, who I think has so much room to grow, right? I think like he can end up being one of the best native supports, right?
Mm-hmm.
In even in the sense of like kind of like that Afro has like interesting picks, right? Has these playmaking player like supports that he can play.
Mm-hmm.
That it's like he is so good, right? And it's like you are wasting an import slot on this, right? Like on Mythy, and it's like how much was there the issue, right? I mean, I think that's been like the storyline. It's like it was said it was communication. Has it got better? It's like
it's
not
gotten
really,
a lot worse.
Right? I mean, right? I mean, and granted, like it will get worse when you switch 3 out of your 5, right? But again, it's tough, right? And it's just. I mean, I think it can get a lot better. I mean, again, I still think Mithy is really fucking smart at the game. I've seen him stream a couple times, and just the way he thinks about the game is just like, dude, what the fuck? Like, I'm like, he's kind of like the similar to Lemonation, but in the sense of like he can actually still perform a lot of the things when he's like on his game. You know what I'm saying? Like, because if he's on his game, like sometimes it's like you don't even have to do mechanically intensive things, but he just is in the right place at the right time. And it's just like he's trying to do that, but he's in a disconnect with the rest of the team.
Yeah.
I think that comes down to expectations and not communication.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the players don't know what they want from each other. And that comes down to also like what are the expectations of Mike Young? And like I said before, there's a clear disconnect, I think, with the top side of the map, including mid lane, comparative to the bottom side of the map, and what they should be playing around, and like what the expectations are and stuff like that. So I think it's a toss up, though, right? So I mean, I think Missy's yes is underperforming, but this felt like I'd be quick to blame this on the hype behind with Reggie than performance by Mithy, because I think anybody that saw that coming in knew they weren't going to perform properly right away.
Yeah, I think like if and even I did, right? If you rated the team highly, is because you expected the team to on all cylinders to be like a really good team. And I still think like if they're on all cylinders, they're really good, but obviously it's taken a lot longer than I think fans and anyone else has expected. But I mean, it was kind of like bound to happen, in my opinion.
All right, cool. So those are 3 players that we think are underrated or I don't know, overrated or underperforming. And maybe we'll do an overrated an underrated or performing above expectations later. But that is it for this episode of the EWatch podcast. We'll see you guys next week.
Bye.